We did have some questions come in around the different schools. One of the things that we were curious is where you see a Caillou Architect or an Utaku Stable Master fitting into a campaign. And to go along with that, I've got to ask this. What's the weirdest mount a Stable Master ever summoned for you? And can you summon a bear?
Summon a bear. I will. So the Kai Architect, I believe Max designed that one, and then I did the Utaku. To that last question, if a bear meets the requirements of the ability and your GM says it's fine, go ahead. Just ride a bear. I personally really wanted to ride an elephant, but Max said no. No elephant.
I mean, I believe the elephant's conflict rank is, like 14? And you wrote the elephant's conflict rank, and that's what the ability is restricted on. So whose fault is this really?
Your fault.
Really?
Yeah, it's your fault. It's not my fault.
I
want to ride an elephant.
Yeah, but I didn't write the elephant's conflict rank.
But I couldn't.
Maybe a very small elephant.
Yes. Baby elephant.
Maybe a little tiny elephant. Anyway.
Yeah, so it is always interesting. Where do these more niche characters fit in campaigns? And I think the answer is, if they call to you, they fit in any campaign to some degree. If the Caillou Architect calls to you, then play it in whatever campaign your GM will let you play it in. It's got a pretty good range of things. Like most schools, it's got a school ability that focuses on the stuff it does. Like, you can find ways to work that stuff into your campaign. And at the end of the day, I'm pretty confident that even a character with no school ability could probably perform just fine in most campaigns in actual practice. I don't think that there is any school ability that is functionally blank, nor would I want there to be. And I certainly don't push their design in that direction. But even if it was, you could certainly, I think, play and have a good time. For something like the Caillou Architect or the Utaku Stable Master, it's all about finding the place where your character does their thing in the campaign the GM has and finding the balance there.
If you really want to play a Utaku Stable Master in a court intrigue game, you can make it work.
You're going to go on hunts. You're going to do outdoor activities. You're going to have to journey. You're going to have to deliver a letter at high speed somewhere. The GM should look at the schools the players chose and say, okay, this is probably a reflection of what they want to do. And so I should work that into the plan somehow, as this is them expressing their interest in a thing. And that's why we do the more niche schools. The Doji Bureaucrat, or although it's iconic, even the Asahina Artificer is kind of niche in some ways.
Yeah, because you feel that if someone's good at making stuff, why are they wandering about the landscape adventuring when surely they should be locked up at home making stuff?
Yeah. And the answer is PCs are exceptional. And why are you out there wandering with this group of all, I don't know, Kitsune impersonators or whatever your group decided to make?
Why am I wandering around with characters who, according to my demographic research, occur about 1 in a million? And why are there 5 of them wandering around with me?
I don't know, but I bet it's a good story.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
One of the things when people say, oh, how can you make one of these characters work in a campaign? And some of it is because we are assuming that we are D&D-esque adventurers who wander about the landscape and have no home and have no fixed abode and are always going off into the next village to find the next dungeon to wander around. But I think Legend of the Five Rings especially allows for a lot more varied campaigns. So if you have a campaign that sits in a city and is always in there and around that city, and you've got loads of stuff to do, then a character like an architect, clearly I'm mostly doing my job of being an architect, but here's my downtown activity. And, oh no, a thing has turned up. Well, I'll obviously go and wander about with the Togashi monk, the Ishiken, and the Kitsune impersonator, and all the other completely impossibly rare people that I seem to hang around in on a regular basis.
I think that's a really good point, that like classic games like Pendragon and stuff like that, what your character is doing when you're playing them is not necessarily the sum total or even the majority of their life. You know, depending on the pace of your game, some games obviously you're going to have a tense one-night game. You could run something like Mirror Mirror if you really wanted to, where it all takes place in one night or 2 nights or however long that death trap is. But you can also have games that go for like months or years in universe, even if they're not that many sessions, because like most of the time your character's doing their samurai stuff. They're filling their post, they're serving their lord in the way that would be expected, or they're not, and that's interesting. They're not necessarily doing like adventure stuff all the time. Most of the time they're living their life, and then sometimes they get pulled into a big intrigue or a secret plot or get shipwrecked and have to build a boat and sail back to Rokugan. I don't know, whatever.
Yeah. We've all been there.
So another school that has gotten a lot of questions about it or remarked is the Shishore Shadow Weavers. That was unexpected, one, because it seems to our listeners to have an extremely high power level. Also, it was unexpected because Scorpion seems to have so many Shigenja, and people were looking for shadow brands. Honestly, because we've seen those in the Scorpion novella, so we know that they're out there in the universe. Could you give us your thoughts behind Shadow Reavers, how you designed and include that school, and if there are shadow brands?
I can speak a little bit to this. When I was thinking about what schools I wanted to do, and I was talking to Max about like where we want to go with the schools, I wanted as a designer to play around with the schools a little bit and the system's flexibility, and I hadn't done something like a Shadow Weaver before, and I just wanted to see what I could mess with. Max, do you want to like say something about that, and then I can talk about shadow brands?
No, I think you should dig in on your thoughts on the Shadow Weaver, because this one is basically all you. I helped you with the wording, but that was about it. All I wanted to say was just to preface that the shadow brands and Shadow Weavers are not the same thing. Shadow brands are something that we intentionally did not include in this book. Did not intend to include in this book. So in case anyone is confused, they are different. Yes, they both have shadow in the name. They are different. This is a particular Shosuro tradition of manipulating shadow for combat and various other nefarious uses. Shadow brands are the strange abilities we see. I can't speak to future products, but I will say that having put some thought into how shadow brands might work, I would expect they would probably function more like inversions than invocations, because they seem to be a more fundamental, like, twisting of reality than just an invocation of shadow or what have you. But they would be their own thing. They're not just inversions either. Or they would be it might be a form of inversion, maybe.
I can't speak to whether or not they will be included in the future or anything like that, but Max and I actually talked about it, because we talked about whether or not we wanted to put shadow brands in here, and shadow brands need attention, and they need pages, and we thought that the Ishiken and their rules fit better with the Phoenix book. We
apportion content to various books, and again, while I can't speak to the particulars of future products, we did not look at that content and say that's a Phoenix thing. We looked at that content and said that's probably for a different book.
I wanted to do a school that was like this, and I had an inspiration from actually a particular video game character. And then I wanted to see if I could make L5R fit around the idea behind that. Not duplicate, but inspired from it. How can I use the L5R system to make something interesting? And then there was also that in Path of Waves, you can also make your own schools there. And so it was that thought of like, how flexible can you be? So I just had a little bit of fun with it. And Max was great with the wording, because Max and syntax, really good.